Now let's go behind the rock screen.
You're welcome to come on in. We'll bring out the moonshine and start telling lies and calling up the women. But no talk about racing. Come on.
This is Josh with the Dirt Court Jesters Podcast, joined by the president of performance racing industry, Mike Good. Mr. Good, thanks for coming on.
PRI. I never knew what it stood for. Thank you.
Oh, well.
No, I'm teasing with you. Good to see you today, man. Look forward to chatting with you. Thanks for being at the show.
I like I told you, I'm overwhelmed. There's a lot to take in. I walked in the door, and this leads to my first question is, I didn't know where to go. I had a plan, and the plan went,
right.
You know,
right
how it goes.
window.
You make a plan and it always changes.
That's right.
What goes in to the preparation of this massive PRI show?
We usually, so next Monday is December 15th. That is when we will start planning the 2026 PRI show. You know, it is a full year-round, full game-on attack. You know, trade shows are interesting. They've changed dynamically over the decades, over the years, and you know, we look at it from the standpoint that we're sitting here having a very humbling privilege to lead the largest motorsports racing trade show in the world, but we've got to reinvent it consistently and constantly. You know, there is a tolerance level of the consumers, of the public. You know, they want to see things change, and so we're thinking about what new experiential aspects do we add to the show that, you know, stay true to the DNA of what PRI is. And at the end of the day, it comes down to, we have roughly 1,100 exhibitors in the building right now. And our North Star is to make sure that those exhibitors are growing their businesses as a result of being here. If we miss that, it's my belief we're on our way to irrelevancy. Like, that is the key thing. And so everything kind of points back to that. What can we do to make sure that we get the right buyers here, the right people in the building, with the right brands, and helping both the buyers get access to the best brands in motorsports, and giving those manufacturers the ability to grow their companies. Because, you know, at the show, so much is going on. Everywhere you look, it's a little bit of sensory overload. Yes, there's beautiful vehicles of all shapes and sizes, but you know, you're also seeing some of the latest and greatest new technologies and featured product showcase and cars. And there's a team behind the scenes that is dividing and conquering on how to make sure all of that goes off flawlessly. And the team is it's crazy privilege to, you know, you feel like you got to become the head coach of the team that's going to win the Super Bowl. Yeah. That's just how this team is. They're dynamic. They understand the industry. They understand the nuances of what it takes to put on an event like this, and we adjust accordingly.
And you talk about all the
year round,
right? All that work that's going on, the business aspect of it, the networking that's being done, and you know, your team helping to create all that. What do you see in the future for PRI? How does it continue to evolve?
I think so. One is the diversity of the motorsports at the show. I use the term agnostic because I can't think of a better one, but we're agnostic. We don't have, this is not a drag racing show. It's not a dirt track. It's not a circle track. It is everything from go-karting to open wheel and everything in between. And so it's making sure that diversity has a presence at the show. One of the new elements this year was called Hammertown. I don't know if you saw it right down there. You know, we're working with the Ultra 4 organization and King of the Hammers. I'm sure that it's all the off-road racing. We really wanted them to have a presence here because it was a void. And we work closely, you know, with the circle tracks and the dirt tracks. Obviously, NHRA, IHRA both have a big presence here. So that's one of the things that'll continue to evolve, is to make sure that we have that cross-representation, but also making sure that we're giving people the ability to connect. I say we do three things: connect, protect, and advocate as an organization. And the show is the connection point. You know, a lot of these people only see each other once a year in this building. And, you know, I say that PRI's done a really good job. I don't take credit for it. It's long before I got here, of bringing together the entire ecosystem of motorsports. And that's the only place on earth where it happens.
Yeah. And
cool.
That leads into kind of my next question is, how do you Because there's so many different genres of motorsports. So how do you make sure you tune into each one? Is it because you have that team that is able to kind of,
Yes,
this is your task, this is your task, this is your
it's really being intentional about it. I live on the road. I'll go from the Knoxville Nationals to Bowling Green, Ohio, to the National Tractor Pull, to the Rolex 24. So it's really being out there, being present, being at the events that are taking place across all forms of racing, sitting down there with the fans that are there, the manufacturers that are there, the race promoters that are there, the sanctioning bodies that are putting it on, whether it's WRG, NHRA, fill in the blank, to really understand what is it that's going on here that we can help be an advocate for or an evangelist for to help you be more successful as a track promoter or as a sanctioning body or as a driver. Because at the end of the day, we want to protect the tracks. When the tracks are strong, the industry is strong. And, right now, there's some tracks, small tracks that are, in some dire situations. Mm-hmm. And so we spend a lot of time, I go to safety summits where we're sitting there understanding what are the safety concerns that are going on in small track USA. I've learned recently this year about small tracks dealing with the cost of paramedics. Mm-hmm. To have paramedics on site. If you don't have that, you can't have the race because the racers are like, you don't have anyone here. If something happens to me, I'm not going to go race on that track. So, it really covers the full spectrum. And from that example of paramedics to helping tracks fight against nuisance laws. Mm-hmm. There was a track in Michigan, been there for decades. New development went up 3 miles away. One homeowner filed a petition to have that track shut down. That track got shut down, lost a whole season. Yeah. So you disrupted the economic impact of that community. You disrupted not only the livelihood of all of those employees and the owner from one homeowner. And, the track holds events 20 days a year. And the guy was 3 miles away. But and I'm not finger pointing to that guy, but we want to fight for that track to stay open. We want to keep the tracks thriving. So it's a big deal.
It's significant. I mean, me being from Ohio.
Yeah, I'm from Youngstown.
And obviously I'm kind of partial to dirt racing.
Right.
We've got quite a few tracks in Ohio, right?
Sure.
And if you look at the economic impact just from them tracks, I mean, it's staggering. Hundreds of millions, if not into the billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So when you start losing them, that is certainly a concern. And I know you can't be biased, but I also know that you enjoy dirt, but on 2 wheels.
Well, that was a long time ago.
Well, so how has motorsports played a role in your life?
Sure. No, good question. I started out on BMX bikes racing, and then I wanted a motorcycle, and my dad was like, no. And so I went and got a paper route. I made my own money and bought a dirt bike, and then started the second level of dirt bike and went from an 80cc to a 125. This was back in the two-stroke days of the 1980s. And that was my thing. And I would have tried to do that professionally if I would have probably grown up anywhere other than here in central Indiana. And I'm of the X Games generation, I grew up as a big fan of like Ricky Johnson and Mickey Diamond and those guys that raced motocross. And, as I got into my adult life, then it was more SCCA, track, car, spending time on track attack, time attack, those types of racing events. And I've always been around it. My dad was a General Motors employee for 30-some years. I'm from Youngstown, Ohio, also a Buckeye. And, I grew up going to the tracks, whether it was tractor pulls, sprints, dirt. Then I moved here when I was 11 and went to the Indianapolis 500, in 1984. That was, kind of mind-blowing. And if you've never been, you should go.
I've never been able to make it.
You live in Dayton. You should make it.
There's no reason I shouldn't. My brother lives outside Indianapolis.
Right. Well, it's 2 hours. So you got to come and check that out because it's just a spectacle. Largest race, single-day event in the world. Yeah. 2 hours from your house. But so I've been around it forever. It's definitely a privilege to work in it. I haven't always worked in the industry. I kept working to get into the industry. And so, it's been awesome.
Well, you mentioned Supercross, and it made me think of something. I know you've heard Mansfield Speedway is coming back.
Yes.
One of the events they have on their schedule is a Supercross event. So it'll be interesting to see that. Yeah, it's good to have tracks coming back.
Yeah.
We certainly want to see that rather than the latter. But it's always a struggle. And that kind of leads into my next question is healthy attendance for big races. And you've mentioned some of them, especially in dirt racing, 25,000 plus people. That's great. And we hope that trend continues. But how do we include the small tracks or the small teams? How do we make sure that they continue?
Sure. Well, I think, you've got the Chili Bowl, the Knoxville Nationals, and Eldora, and all that Tony Stewart's done with that place. It really comes down to you need those big events to stay successful because they help bring the sport up and they bring attention to the sport. And then it's really the ecosystem. Mm-hmm. It really needs to work cohesively and together. And, we spend a lot of time talking to small track owners and trying to understand what it is, what are some of the struggles you're facing so that we can help. And we'll help through education and advocacy and however we can. But I really think it's a lot of best practice sharing and, the big tracks understanding what the little tracks are going through because they need each other.
Yes.
They need each other.
Yep.
All the small tracks can't go away because you're not going to have a feeder system in the industry. And so, unfortunately, there's not a silver bullet solution. Sure. It's just being intentional, I think, about how we attack it as an industry and giving it credit when, giving it the respect that it needs.
Have you seen, I hate to narrow it down, it's just my forte, but have you seen a trend in dirt oval racing as of late?
A trend in what kind?
Well, it could be positive or negative. My hopes is you're seeing positive trend. Obviously, we talk about the attendance at some of those major events.
I haven't really tracked the attendance other than what I hear and see firsthand. But if you ask me, it's thriving. I haven't really been following the prize pools and, that are taking place. But everything that I see, I was at an event in Eldora not too long ago and completely dumbfounded at that the number of people that came into that facility in the middle of nowhere. Eldora is not a track you're not going to stumble across it. Yeah. It's hidden almost. You have to really be seeking it out to get there. And and same with Knoxville Nationals. That track's right in the heart of the town. Mm-hmm. Literally, there's houses, 15 feet across the street.
Right.
So everything I've seen, it's thriving. The race teams, you hear from guys like Kyle Larson that has made it, by most definitions, and he still gets on the dirt as often as he can, and because that's his DNA. That's what he's about. And that guy, went on to another level of racing, and that's his number one love. And that's an extreme example, right? But from what I have seen, I would say it's thriving. But I know that there's pain going on in some of the small tracks, and there are teams that are underfunded and can't get sponsorship and are dealing with, regulation issues. And so, the struggle is real.
It's interesting because, from my perspective, it kind of looks like it's doing a little bit of both, where streaming seems to be pretty popular.
Yes.
I think you're starting to see sponsors come into the sport that hadn't been there. So that looks like positive. We've talked about some tracks closing down, but we've also had some tracks. Millstream came back not too long ago in Ohio now. Mansfield's coming back. And,
right.
So I think everything's trending, obviously, in an upward direction. Controlling cost is big, I think, for teams that aren't top teams. So that's really kind of
and for the track owners, controlling costs.
We talk about performance, obviously, performance racing industry show here. That's key, but safety is paramount. And what have you seen in terms of response to safety in motorsports in general?
I see the guidelines continuing to be evolved, and they're listening and they're observing and they're taking the data and putting a regimented safety guidelines in place that are, that's a place where, it's journey versus destination. You're never going to reach your destination where you can stop thinking about it. You're going to continuously be driving change related to safety. And across all aspects, not just dirt, like all aspects of motorsports.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've seen what's the technology of a helmet and what it has done over the last decade, and the Hans device, and all of those elements. I was at a safety summit, and they were talking about an EV situation where the car caught fire, and that's a whole other learning curve around how to deal with an EV, because we can't bury our head in the sand. That's coming.
Right.
In some form or fashion. Hopefully it's not going to replace ICE. It'll just be another form, complementary. It's an internal combustion. But, from a safety standpoint, it opened up a whole new list of things that the average track was not prepared to take care of. And, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
Safety, it really comes down to having really good governance across the sport, whether it's at the sanction level, primarily at the sanction level, where they are continuously evolving and adding regimented safety guidelines. But
it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I know there's been rumbling, especially, again, I'm going to put it into my niche, but the dirt track racing community, as far as having like a governing body specifically for safety across the country. I don't know if that's realistic, because there's so many moving parts and so many different tracks and things like that, but
right.
I know that's been.
Well, I know, World Racing Group and Brian Carter and those guys are putting together. They have a great program. High Limits has a great program. There's a lot of safety guidelines across those sanctions, and it's paramount to them.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, if any of these sanctions are putting out a sport where the drivers feel like they are not protected, then you're starting. That's your way to irrelevancy pretty quick.
So, well, as we wrap this up, Mr. Good, just talk about how PRI is involved so much in protecting motorsports and ensuring that it continues to thrive.
Sure. Connect, protect, and advocate, so it's ongoing. We never can stop doing any of that. And, I gave you the example of the nuisance laws that are taking place. And we've lost some pretty significant tracks over the past couple of years. Eldora out in Southern California, a landmark type of facility that a lot of emotion to that, because it was near and dear to them. And, you can't fight situations when a developer comes in and offers a family that's maybe owned a property for 50 years, and all of a sudden they're being offered generational wealth, and some crazy amount of money per acre.
Yeah.
So I don't fault that by any stretch, but we also have to find ways to keep tracks thriving and keep new tracks being able to come open. SCCA, Michael Cobb at SCCA, he wants more tracks that he can put on SCCA events at. And, SCCA can't afford to go to the thermals or the flat rocks necessarily, because they're high-end kind of country club tracks. They're great, but it's a very specific audience for that, and we are seeing those come up, and it's great. All things are standing in the sport up, but, PRI is always going to be fighting that battle. We have a whole team in Washington, D.C., ran by Karen Bailey Chapman. And my gosh, they are fighting in the halls of Congress and the House, and have had some significant wins in the legislative world related to the automotive aftermarket world, I'll call it, the SEMA world, and the PRI motorsports world. So we're going to be, that's why we're here. We're a non-for-profit. We have these shows to raise the funds to go fight those battles. So I don't know if what really goes on. We are a non-for-profit that makes money to advocate and protect the industry, and that's a key message. The role doesn't get any bigger than that. Right.
President of PRI, Mike Good, I can't thank you enough for this.
Good.
It was awesome. I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad I made it. I've got a plan for the second half of this day, and I'm going to go to Taggart and see if I can knock some of this stuff out. But the shows what you guys are doing is awesome. I can't thank you enough for your time.
Josh, I wish you all the well, and have a great time here, and be safe in your travels back to Dayton.
Yes,
and have a great season.
I appreciate it. Everybody, this is Josh with the Dirt Court Jesters Podcast, and we hope to see you at the track.
Thanks, guys.
Goodbye, mwah, and good night, bang.
Thanks for listening to the Dirt Court Jesters podcast. As always, this is Josh, and you can follow us on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube at Dirt Court Jester. And we hope to see you guys at the track.